Zaya sprinted down the alleyway, her heart pounding in rhythm with her footsteps on the cracked pavement. The drone of the pursuit craft grew louder behind her, joined by the guttural shouts of the Crocs soldiers. She ducked into a narrow gap between two crumbling buildings, hoping to shake her pursuers. No such luck. A hovercraft descended into the alley ahead, cutting off her escape. She was surrounded. Zaya raised her hands in surrender, scowling at the gray-skinned Crocs warriors as they approached. Zaya Solarin, the lead Croc sneered, consulting his holopad. Quite the list of offenses for a human so young. Theft, forgery, resisting arrest, assaulting a Crocs official. He had it coming, Zaya spat. Your kind treat us like dirt. The Crocs laughed humorlessly. And you're about to find out why. You've been conscripted, human. You should be grateful, you'll have a chance to finally make something of your miserable life. Before Zaya could protest, the butt of a plasma rifle slammed into her temple and everything went black. She awoke in a holding cell, her head throbbing. A few dozen other humans were crammed into the small space, most of them bearing the telltale signs of a rough arrest. Zaya recognized a few faces from the streets. What's going on? She asked the man next to her, a wiry fellow with a tattooed face. Conscription, he grunted. Heard the Crocs are running low on cannon fodder for the front lines. They're press-ganging anyone with a record. Zaya's stomach turned. She'd heard stories of what happened to humans in Crocs military units. They were given the most dangerous roles, the lowest supplies, treated as expendable. Few ever returned. A hatch clanged open and Crocs soldiers began dragging recruits out. They were stripped, deloused, and issued ill-fitting gray uniforms before being herded into a cramped transport ship. Zaya found herself shoved into a line of conscripts facing a towering Crocs commander. His eyes were pure black and his gray skin was crosshatched with scars. I am Commander Kazral, he growled. You pathetic humans are now part of Unit Zeta, under my command. You will follow orders without question or face severe punishment. We do not tolerate disobedience. His gaze lingered on Zaya, his lip curling in disgust. I know your kind, he snarled. Street scum. Thieves and shirkers. You won't last a day on the front. Zaya met his stare defiantly, though her heart raced. She wanted to spit in his scarred face, but held back. Starting a fight now would only get her killed. Our mission, Kazral continued, is to neutralize a key enemy outpost on Jakara 7. Many of you will not return. But your sacrifice will help ensure the glory of the Crocs dominion. He stepped back, nodding to his lieutenant. Prepare them for cryosleep. We drop in 12 cycles. Zaya barely had time to process the suddenness of it all before she was strapped into a cryopod, a sedative mist hissing around her. As her consciousness faded, she caught one last glimpse of Commander Kazral. There was no pity in his obsidian eyes, no trace of compassion. To him, she was a tool to be used and discarded. Expendable. But Zaya was a survivor. She'd clawed her way through the unforgiving streets of the human slums, fighting for every scrap. The Crocs thought she was gutter trash, that she'd break easily. They were wrong. As the cryosleep took hold, Zaya swore to herself that she'd find a way to survive this, no matter the odds. She'd show Kazral and the rest of them what street scum was truly capable of. The pod's lid slid shut, and the cold embrace of cryo claimed her, carrying her into an uncertain future. But one thing was certain, Zaya would not go down easily. The Crocs had no idea who they'd just recruited. Zaya awoke to the hiss of her cryopod opening, the acrid smell of swamp gas filling her nostrils. Groggily, she stumbled out into the muggy heat of Jakara 7, joining the other groggy recruits in formation. Commander Kazral emerged from his own pod, looking none the worse for cryosleep. On your feet, worms, he barked. We move out in 5. Prepare your gear and check your weapons. Zaya looked down at the unfamiliar plasma rifle shoved into her hands. She'd never fired one before, but it couldn't be too different from the cobbled-together slug throwers she'd used in the slums. The swampland stretched out before them, a twisted morass of gnarled trees, bubbling muck, and fetid water. Strange calls echoed from the mist-shrouded depths, some sounding almost unnervingly sentient. Khazral led them in, his scarred face set in a scowl. "Keep your wits about you," he growled. "Everything in this forsaken bog wants to kill you." He wasn't wrong. Within the first hour, a dozen recruits had vanished, dragged screaming into the murky water by tentacled horrors, or impaled on the barbed vines that lashed out from the trees. Zaya kept to the middle of the group, watching her step and keeping her rifle ready. She noticed that the Croc soldiers seemed to have a preternatural sense for the swamp's dangers, sidestepping hidden sinkholes and ducking grasping vines with ease. She started to imitate their movements, learning to read the subtle signs. A bubbling in the water before a strike, a slight twitch in the vines before they lashed out. Slowly, she began to navigate the hazards with more confidence. It was during a rest stop that the krakenweed struck. Massive tendrils erupted from the water, ensnaring a score of soldiers. Barbed hooks at the ends of the tendrils pierced their flesh, injecting paralytic venom. Chaos erupted as the soldiers fired wildly at the tendrils, but the plasma bolts seemed to have little effect. Zaya watched in horror as one by one, the ensnared soldiers were dragged beneath the surface, their screams cut off in gurgles. Even Khazral seemed at a loss, his usually stern face showing a flicker of fear. But Zaya's mind raced, recalling a story she'd heard from an old spacer in a dingy cantina. "Fire at the base," she yelled, aiming her rifle at where the tendrils emerged from the water. "That's where the central pod is." Khazral's head snapped towards her, his eyes narrowing. But he followed her lead, directing his soldiers to concentrate their fire. The water boiled and steamed under the onslaught, and slowly, the tendrils began to slacken. With a final burst of fire, the krakenweed pod burst, spewing ichor. The remaining tendrils sank lifeless into the water. In the aftermath, as the soldiers tended to the wounded, Khazral approached Zaya. "Quick thinking, human," he grudgingly admitted. "How did you know?" Zaya shrugged. "Just something I heard in a bar once. Never thought it'd actually be useful." Khazral stared at her appraisingly, as if truly seeing her for the first time. "Perhaps there's more to you than meets the eye," he mused. From that moment, something shifted in the dynamic between them. Khazral started to watch Zaya more closely, not with disdain, but with a glimmer of curiosity, perhaps even a modicum of respect. As they pressed on through the swamp, Zaya's street-honed instincts and quick thinking saved the unit from several more close calls. She spotted the signs of quicksand traps, allowing the unit to skirt them safely, and jury-rigged a makeshift antivenom from local flora when a soldier was bitten by a venomous whipsnake. By the time they reached the edge of the swamps, their numbers had been cut in half. But those who remained, Zaya included, had forged a bond of survival. Even the Croc soldiers began to look at her with something akin to camaraderie. As they set up camp for the night, Khazral approached Zaya once more. "You've done well, Zaya," he said, using her name for the first time. "Better than I expected." Zaya met his gaze steadily. "I'm full of surprises," she replied. A ghost of a smile flickered across Khazral's scarred face. "Indeed you are. Rest now. Tomorrow, we assault the fortress. And something tells me your surprises will be needed more than ever." As Zaya settled into her bedroll, she couldn't help but feel a spark of pride. She'd survived the swamps, and in doing so, had begun to change the way the Crocs saw her. But the real test was yet to come. The fortress loomed ahead, a bastion of the enemy, daring them to try their luck. Zaya knew it would take more than quick wits to breach those walls. It would take a miracle. Or perhaps, just a street rat with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Zaya smiled to herself as she drifted off to sleep. Tomorrow, she'd show them all what she was truly made of. Dawn broke over the fortress, revealing towering walls of black stone and gleaming metal. Energy barriers shimmered over the ramparts, and the barrels of heavy plasma cannons jutted from battlements. It looked impregnable. Commander Kazral gathered the remaining soldiers, his face grim. Our objective is to breach the fortress and disable the command center. We'll be outnumbered and outgunned, but we have the element of surprise. His gaze fell on Zaya and the other human conscripts. You lot will create a diversion at the main gate. Draw their fire and keep them occupied while we infiltrate from the rear. Zaya's heart sank. It was a suicide mission, and they all knew it. The humans were being used as cannon fodder, just as she'd feared. But as Kazral outlined the plan further, Zaya's eyes caught on a small detail on the fortress schematics, a narrow sewage outflow, barely large enough for a person to squeeze through, leading directly into the lower levels. An idea began to form, a desperate gamble. She waited until Kazral dismissed them to prepare, then approached him cautiously. "Commander, I have a proposal," she said, keeping her voice low. "Send me in alone, through the sewage tunnel. I can disable the defenses from the inside, open the gates for the main force." Kazral's obsidian eyes narrowed. "That's suicide, even for a human. The tunnel will be guarded, and the inner defenses will be even worse." Zaya met his gaze steadily. "I'm small and quick, I can slip past. And I know my way around security systems. It's a better chance than throwing lives away at the front gate." For a long moment, Kazral studied her, his scarred face unreadable. Then, to Zaya's surprise, he nodded. "Very well. But if you fail, we proceed with the original plan. The mission comes first." Zaya nodded, her heart pounding. "Understood." She geared up quickly, taking only a compact plasma pistol, a multi-tool, and a few small charges. As she approached the sewage outflow, the stench nearly overwhelmed her, but she gritted her teeth and plunged in. The tunnel was narrow and dark, filled with fetid water that reached her chest. Zaya pushed forward, ignoring the revolting sensation of things brushing past her legs in the murk. Twice she had to submerge completely to avoid detection by patrol drones, holding her breath in the foul water until her lungs burned. But she made it through, emerging in a dim maintenance chamber. From there, she crept through the fortress's underbelly, dodging patrols and security scanners. She made her way to the power core, where she planted her charges on the main reactor. The explosion rocked the fortress, and alarms began to blare. In the chaos, Zaya sprinted for the control room. She burst in, surprising the Croc's technicians inside. A few quick shots from her plasma pistol dispatched them before they could raise the alarm. Working frantically, Zaya hacked into the fortress systems. She disabled the energy barriers and powered down the plasma cannons. Then, with a deep breath, she opened the main gates. The Croc's forces streamed in, catching the defenders completely off guard. Zaya joined the fray, fighting her way through the corridors to rejoin her unit. She found Kazral in the thick of battle, his plasma rifle blazing. When he saw her, his eyes widened in disbelief. "You did it," he breathed. "You actually did it." Zaya grinned, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Told you I was full of surprises." Side by side, they fought their way to the command center. With the defenses down and the element of surprise, the Croc's forces made short work of the remaining defenders. As the last enemy fell, a cheer went up from the Croc soldiers. They had done the impossible, taken the impregnable fortress. And it was all thanks to Zaya, the human conscript they had once dismissed as gutter trash. As she stood there, plasma rifle smoking in her hands, she saw the look of respect, even admiration, in Kazral's eyes. For the first time in her life, Zaya felt a sense of true accomplishment. She had proven herself, not just to the Crocs, but to herself. She was more than just a street rat, more than just a survivor. She was a warrior. And she had earned her place among the stars. But their victory was short-lived. As they secured the command center, a chilling discovery awaited them. The fortress was not just a military outpost. It was a breeding ground. And in the depths below, something stirred. Something ancient and terrible. The real battle was about to begin. The deeper they pushed into the fortress, the more unsettling it became. The sleek, military corridors gave way to organic, pulsating tunnels, the walls seeming to throb with a sickening life of their own. A sense of dread settled over the Croc's warriors as they advanced, weapons at the ready. Even Commander Khazral seemed unnerved, his scarred face taut with tension. Zaya felt it too, a crawling sensation up her spine, a primal instinct screaming at her to flee. But she pushed forward, determined to see the mission through. They entered a vast, domed chamber, and the horror was revealed. Rows upon rows of pulsating egg sacs lined the walls, each one large enough to hold a full-grown Crocs. And in the center, presiding over this nightmarish nursery, was the Hive Queen. She was a monstrosity, a gigantic insectoid creature with glistening black chitin and multiple, compound eyes that gleamed with malevolent intelligence. Her mandibles dripped with viscous fluid as she turned to face the intruders. Khazral opened fire immediately, his plasma rifle searing through the air. But the queen was too fast, her exoskeleton too tough. She lunged at him with blinding speed, her barbed stinger piercing his armor as if it were paper. Khazral screamed as the venom pumped into his body, his gun clattering to the floor as he collapsed, convulsing. Chaos erupted as the queen's drones poured into the chamber, engaging the Croc's warriors in a furious melee. Plasma fire mixed with the acidic spray of the drones, the air filling with the stench of burning chitin and seared flesh. Zaya ducked and weaved through the mayhem, her smaller size an advantage as she evaded the drones' attacks. She saw Khazral lying prone, the queen advancing on him for the kill. Without hesitation, she charged, leaping onto the queen's back and clinging to her ridged chitin. The queen screeched and bucked, trying to dislodge her, but Zaya held on grimly, her plasma pistol firing point-blank into the monster's skull. The queen's exoskeleton began to crack under the onslaught, ichor oozing from the fissures. But still, she would not fall. With a desperate cry, Zaya jammed her pistol into one of the cracks and fired, the plasma bolt searing deep into the creature's brain. The queen convulsed, a shrill keen emanating from her mouthparts. Then, slowly, ponderously, she toppled, crashing to the chamber floor. Zaya rolled clear, panting, her uniform smoking from the queen's acidic blood. Around her, the drones were falling back, disoriented without their queen's psychic control. The Croc's warriors rallied, pressing their advantage, driving the drones back. Zaya rushed to Khazral's side, cradling his head. The commander was in bad shape, his skin ashen, his breathing shallow. But his eyes flickered open as Zaya held him, focusing on her with effort. You saved me," he rasped. "You saved us all." Zaya shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "We did it together," she said. "Just hold on, we'll get you out of here." But Khazral was fading, his life ebbing away. With a last effort, he gripped Zaya's hand, his gaze intense. "You are a true warrior, Zaya," he whispered. "It was an honor to fight beside you." His eyes drifted shut, his hand going slack in hers. Zaya bowed her head, grief and exhaustion washing over her. The fortress was taken, the queen was dead. But the cost had been high. Too high. As the surviving Crocs gathered around her, their faces a mix of respect and sorrow, Zaya made a silent vow. She would honor Khazral's memory. She would take the place he had seen in her, become the warrior he had believed she could be. No longer just a street rat, no longer just a conscript. She was Zaya Solaran, soldier of the Croc's dominion. And she would fight on, for all those who could not. The journey back to the Croc's homeworld was a somber one. The surviving warriors mourned their fallen comrades, the weight of their losses heavy on their shoulders. Zaya felt it keenly, the absence of Commander Khazral a constant ache in her chest. He had been the first to see her potential, the first to treat her as more than just expendable chattel. As they disembarked from the transport, Zaya expected to be dismissed, sent back to the slums from whence she came. Her role in the mission might have earned her some respect, but she was still an outsider, a human in a Croc's world. To her surprise, she was instead escorted to the Grand Hall of the Croc's military command. There, before the assembled leadership, including the fearsome War Council, she was called forward. The Supreme Commander, a grizzled veteran with a face like carved granite, looked down at her from his elevated podium. "Zaya Solaran," he intoned, his voice a rumble of thunder. "Your actions on Jakara 7 have been noted. You displayed courage, ingenuity, and a warrior's spirit that belies your species." Zaya stood straight, her heart pounding in her chest. This was more than she had ever expected, more than she had ever dared hope for. "Commander Khazral saw greatness in you," the Supreme Commander continued. "He believed that you could be more than what you were born to. And through your deeds, you have proven him right." He stepped down from the podium, approaching Zaya. In his hands, he held a gleaming Croc's battle insignia, the highest honor a warrior could receive. "Kneel," he commanded. Zaya dropped to one knee, scarcely believing what was happening. The Supreme Commander placed the insignia on her shoulder, the metal cool and heavy against her skin. "Rise, Zaya Solaran, warrior of the Croc's dominion." As Zaya stood, the assembled Crocs let out a roar of approval, a thunder of fists pounding against armored chests. She was one of them now, a sister in arms, a warrior born of blood and fire. In that moment, Zaya felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. Her entire life, she had been an outcast, a reject, surviving on the fringes of society. But now, she had a purpose, a place. She had a family, forged not by blood, but by the unbreakable bonds of shared hardship and triumph. As the cheers continued, Zaya's thoughts turned to Khazral. He had seen in her what no one else had, not even herself. He had believed in her, even when she hadn't believed in herself. She silently renewed her vow to honor his memory, to be the warrior he had known she could be. She would fight for the Croc's dominion, for her new brothers and sisters, with every fiber of her being. No longer a street rat. No longer an outcast. She was Zaya Solaran, warrior of the Crocs. And she had finally found her place among the stars.